Hi everyone, and welcome to Moxxie Life Coaching. I'm Michelle, and I'll be your host as we explore what life coaching is and how it can empower you to create and live your best life. We'll talk about topics ranging from our own self-defeating behaviors to getting to know our authentic selves. Together, we'll investigate a variety of self-coaching modalities and explore a wide range of topics relevant to getting the most out of the life that you are actively creating. New episodes will drop every Tuesday, so please subscribe so you don't miss out on the great hints, tips, and tricks, and generally awesome content that will help you create your best life. So welcome, and thank you for listening. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Moxxie Coaching Pep Talk, your guide to finding and embracing your authentic self. This week we're going to expand a bit on the episode I did previously that discussed a little bit about how I approach using the tarot in my coaching practice. And this will be the first of probably a series of posts that walk us through working with the tarot from a self-coaching perspective. A little bit of background information, or a little bit more background information about the tarot itself to get us started. The earliest known deck is from about the year 1440. And it bears some resemblance to the current tarot, but there are a lot of differences. And it was originally used as a game of sorts. Historical, verifiable records of the tarot really don't show up until about the 1700s. And the tarot we know today began to emerge in the early 1900s. And that tarot is a version of the original Marseille tarot deck in the 1700s that was reworked, essentially recreated by a group of three people who re-envisioned what the tarot looked like, published their own deck, and that deck has become the most ubiquitous deck, I'm going to venture to say, in the world, and that is the Rider-Smith-Waite deck. In the late 1800s and the early 1900s, there was a push or a fascination with metaphysics. And a lot of that, the historians will tell you, is due to their fascination with death. And they had such a fascination with death because of all of the challenges that they lived through on a daily basis. It was unusual for a woman to have a number of children and have all of them survive. It's not unusual, or it wasn't unusual, for someone to die of the flu or an illness that today would maybe, take us out for a couple days. We might have to get some antibiotics and then we're back on our feet. So the amount, or the level of immersion, or the level of exposure to death, is part of what started to create some of that interest. In the late 20th century, psychologists and academics actually started to use the tarot. And Carl Jung, who most of you have probably heard of, explored a lot of the archetypal imagery, the archetypal concepts included in the tarot. And to be completely honest with you, that's part of what attracted me to the tarot. As someone who has a pretty darn balanced right brain, left brain thing going on, while I fully embrace the metaphysical and I fully embrace the things that I can't completely explain, I really appreciate any science behind it or any rigor imposed that helps legitimize whatever the practice is. Basically, I have a fear of being duped. And so I'm not just going to believe it because I see it. I need to believe it because I have read about it, because I have experienced it myself, because of whatever. So a lot of the tarot and a lot of other things that we'll probably talk about in this podcast are things that have both that right brain, left brain balancing component. But I digress. The Rider-Smith Waite deck, as I said, is the most ubiquitous deck that's out there right now. And it's the deck on which I would say the majority of the tarot decks around these days are based on. The modern decks typically will take the foundation of the Rider-Smith-Waite deck and tweak it in a way that fits the theme of whatever they're trying to do in the cards. You know, there are cards out there based on everything from, insects to vampires to fairies to crows. There is a Rider-Smith-Waite deck out there for everyone. Anyone who's looking for one will have no problem finding something that resonates with them. And this podcast is going to focus on the Rider-Smith-Waite. There are a couple other options out there. There's the Thoth Tarot and the Leormand Tarot, neither of which I am familiar enough to speak authoritatively. So that's the end of that. All right, so let's get into the meat. The tarot is made up of 78 cards. Within those 78 cards, there are, depending on how you count them, because some people and different decks count them differently, but there are 22 cards in what's called the Major Arcana. There are 16 cards that are called court cards. And there are the remaining that are called minor arcana cards. And each card in the deck has a distinct separate meaning, a distinct separate interpretation. Each of those sets of cards has a different purpose. The minor arcana cards are about daily life, trials and tribulations, those types of things. The major arcana cards are about the big things in life: death, birth, justice, all of those things. And the court cards are cards that help us look at personality traits in people and in ourselves. And often the traits of the person in that court card are being illustrated in some way, either through the person who is doing the reading or through someone that's in relationship with that person. So let's go back to the super basics here. We have our minor arcana cards that are split up into 4 different suits, just like playing cards, except these suits are swords, wands, cups, and discs or pentacles, depending upon your teacher and also depending on the deck. So swords, swords are air cards, and air cards represent thoughts, ideas, intellect. So for example, a queen of swords is a sharp cookie. She is someone you don't want to mess with if you are not feeling like you have all of your homework done and all of your ducks in a row. She is someone who will keep you on task, who will make sure that you're getting your work done, who will challenge you. Wands are related to fire. And wands are all about action and movement, activity, getting things done, moving a project forward, finally taking that first step. Cups are represented by water, and they typically relate to our intuition and our imagination, our emotions, our creativity, inside things, right? Things that are usually a little bit harder to see in other people. And then the last of the 4 categories is discs or pentacles. And these represent earth and things such as material objects, our physical bodies, financial transactions and money, things that we have to deal with every day. Things that we see with our eyes as opposed to things that we feel or experience. Of the structure of the cards, I thought I would take a minute to talk about some of the myths around tarot cards that I think are wrong. Okay, so the first is that tarot is dark or sinister or occult. And that belief, in my opinion, really came from 2 places. It came from the movies, it came from popular media, and excuse me, it also came from a misunderstanding, a fundamental misunderstanding of what the tarot is and what it can do for us. And as we all know, that when people don't understand things, they have a tendency to fear them. So often we would see in the movies scenes with the gypsy tarot reader, the scenes with the mysterious woman with the wild hair and the long fingernails, and she's looking at the cards and then she looks up at you and gives you a little side eye like, oh boy, are you in trouble. And that's been perpetuated again and again and again in media. And while that's a fun thing for Halloween, it's not necessarily an accurate representation of the tarot and how it should be used. Ultimately, tarot cards are literally just pieces of cardboard with laminated images on them. In and of themselves, they are completely powerless, inanimate objects. The reason they have power behind them is because of the intention that we put behind asking the question and shuffling and dealing the cards. In a traditional tarot reading, either the reader themselves or the querent, the person asking the question, will shuffle the cards while spending some time focusing in their mind on the question. People often will say they want to have a tarot reading because they want to know what's going to happen if, when, how, all of those things. As humans, we want to know the future in the worst way. And while I would absolutely love it if the tarot could do that, I personally do not believe that divination or telling the future is the best use for the tarot. I would leave that to someone with a proven track record as a psychic, quite frankly. The reason the cards struggle to tell our future is because as human beings, we have free will. If someone does a reading for someone and the querent wants to know if her boyfriend will cheat on her, that's a really tough one to answer. This woman says, I would like to know if my boyfriend will cheat on me. One can receive a reading, but because the woman for whom the reading is done has free will, there's nothing to say that she wouldn't inadvertently or intentionally do something that would alter the message in the reading. For example, let's make this fun. So we're going to say that this is Kylie. Kylie is at the bar with her girlfriends, and last week she had a reading, and in the reading it said, nope, I do not see your boyfriend cheating on you. I see him as being a faithful person. Wonderful. Kaylee's all excited, except she might not be quite as faithful as he. And while she's at the bar with her friends, she's flirting with some other guy. She's behaving in a way, let's just say, that is not appropriate for someone in a committed relationship. And her boyfriend's buddy's there and sees her and goes back and talks to the boyfriend and says, hey, I just saw Kaylee at the bar and she was all over so and so. Well, knowing this, the boyfriend then feels more justified in cheating. And because of her behavior, because she had free will, her actions changed the outcome. If Kaylee had not behaved that way, her boyfriend would not have had the reaction he had and done whatever he decided to do to get back at her. Now, this is a, ridiculous, shallow example, but I think it makes the point. So, if someone asks me to do a yes or no reading, I will almost always say yes, and this is what you need to know about yes or no reading. Or I will say yes, and let's also reframe or let's add an additional question that allows us to ask in a way that will get more information than a simple yes. That will get more information than a simple yes or no. Some people also think of cards as good and bad. I would argue that there is no such thing as a good card and there is no such thing as a bad card. But someone who might not be familiar with the symbolism, with the traditional meanings of the cards and whatnot, may look at them and say, what do you mean there's not a good one and a bad one? There's this one here with this little baby, this little cute naked baby on the back of a horse with a red flag banner, and he is just happy and everything is wonderful and the sun is shining in the background. And then you show me this other cup with this guy who's all hunched over under the weight of these big sticks that he's carrying, And he's really struggling. So don't you tell me that there are no good cards and no bad cards. To that, I would say that it really, truly just depends on the situation in which the cards are being read. A lot of people will look at a card like the devil and say, oh my gosh, that's the devil, that's a horrible, what's going to happen, bad, bad, bad. Well, in a traditional tarot reading, the devil is really far more about ourselves and about the things that we engage in that keep us tied to something in a negative way. So, for example, someone who is uh, an alcoholic, that devil card could come up to remind them and say, "Hey, this is an issue, and you have an addiction, and you have a problem, and there's something you can do about it." The death card, another one. People will look at the death card and think, oh my gosh, that means somebody's going to die or I'm going to die. Not at all. The death card is far more about rebirth. What's going to happen at the end of whatever is going on for you right now? Because when something dies, there's opportunity for something else to grow. So, this whole concept of good cards and bad cards really is inappropriate. And if you have a sensitive reader, or if you yourself are reading and doing some self coaching, it's good to know that the cards are benign, that it really has a lot more to do with the interpretation, with the situation, with the people involved, and that type of thing. Another Another myth around tarot is that you can use it to basically tell you what to do, to direct you. Um, Again, for the same reason that I don't necessarily believe tarot cards are a good option for divination, I don't think that they're a good option for yes or no. Um, they are not a black and white practice, they are very much open to interpretation, and they will serve us best if we're open to those interpretations and open to what our intuition is telling us about these cards. So for self-coaching, I would say as a caveat that yes and no cards can be used to a certain extent if you're doing some self-coaching. If you are willing to do the work um, based on where the cards are directing you. In general, the cards should be used as more of an internal guidance system. Especially if you're self-coaching, if you are working with others, because the point of my sharing the tarot with you is to help you understand how to use it for self-coaching. It's important that you know that the cards are not an oracle. They're not omniscient. They're not omnipotent. They don't know it all. They can't make everything happen for you. Again, they are a guidance system. They are a way to tap into your intuition and to identify the areas where you can help yourself move forward, to help yourself recognize, oh my gosh, I didn't really think about it that way, or to gain more clarity about a situation, to be able to sit down and ask the cards something to the effect of, what do I need to know about this situation I'm experiencing at work? Or what do I need to know about how to address my feelings related to X, Y, or Z? So try to, if you are one of those people who tends to look at tarot through the traditional and through the stereotypical eye, try to recontextualize it for yourself and look at it as a tool, just essentially another tool for you to use to get to know yourself and to tap into some of those things that are buried in your subconscious. In the next tarot based episode, we're going to be talking more about the individual suits. We'll start to break down the 78 cards in more detail and hopefully help you begin to see how you can use the cards to help yourself. Thank you so much for listening. I greatly appreciate it. I just wanted to make a quick note to let you know that there is a fun quiz up on moxxiecoaching.com that is a quiz that can help you to better understand if you are a good candidate for coaching, if coaching is something that might be helpful to you. And you can find that at moxxie.com/quiz. And Moxxie is Moxxie. So again, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate your being here, and I look forward to talking to you again. Be well.